CFMOTO's 450NK and 450SS are absolutely phenomenal options in the market right now, but with sharing so many similarities, it could be hard to decide which bike is right for you. So I've been spending a ton of miles over the last couple months on both of these motorcycles. So in today's video, I'm going to let you guys know which one is right for you based on the type of riding you plan to do on it. What's going on, guys? I'm Chase, and this is another episode of our WBR Garage show where we buy motorcycles, we make awesome YouTube videos for you guys, and then after we're done with them, we give them away. We do that with that top link in the description down below, or going to WBRgarage.com. You can either win this 450ss that we're making this video on, or you can win our 300ss that we're also giving away. I'm giving away 2 bikes this season, so you get double the entries to win. Don't worry, it's super cheap. All you gotta do is check that top link in the description down below. If you're already supporting, thank you very much. Let's get to reviewing these bikes. Before we get on these bikes, let's quickly go over what's the same and how they're different so we know what we're working with here. Starting with similarities, there are a ton. Both of these bikes are going to share the same 450cc parallel twin engine. I truly love this engine, not only for that stock sound thanks to the same exhaust, which you can hear a difference here. That is all. But also the amazing character that this engine gives to the riding, although there are some slight differences, but we'll talk about those later. Now obviously our giveaway 450ss, we've installed a Yoshi exhaust on it. This exhaust can be installed on a 450NK, so if you want your bike to sound like this, you can with this exhaust, and if you guys want, I'll leave links in the description so you guys can grab one. Next up for similarities is the chassis. It has the same suspension and it has the same slipper clutch. Now let's move on to how they are different. Now, visually you guys can tell these guys are different, but there are differences in 2 main categories on each of these bikes. The rider triangle is basically how you fit on the bike and is defined by connecting the handlebars to the seat to the foot pegs, making a triangle shape. With the 450NK, we have a set of handlebars which is going to bring your hand position up and closer to you. On the 450ss, we have a clip-on style which is going to pivot the rider down and into a more aggressive position. Now, of course, with everything, there are pros and cons to both of these body positions, and we'll get into the details of those when we get on the bikes. The next major difference is going to be the fairings and the styling of each bike. This is probably the most obvious thing that you guys are seeing. The 450ss is fully faired with a nice windscreen for deflecting wind at higher speeds, while the 450NK is a naked bike with very limited fairings comparatively. I should also note that the 450ss does come with a bit of a front brake upgrade with its Brembo caliber, but of course don't worry, the 450NK, not to be outdone, comes with traction control, which the SS doesn't have. Now that we're clear on both bikes and their differences, let's go for some rides and figure out which situations these bikes are best on. I think I'll start with the NK. Now guys, when it comes to the 450NK, you are going to be in a much more upright situation. I don't know if you guys can even tell it from the helmet camera. You might be able to, but you guys are probably looking through this camera and seeing way easier ahead of me. I'm not leaned over at all. I am upright. One of the things this body position is going to allow you to do
is be in a much more comfortable position. Obviously, I'm not leaned over, so my back's not having to hold me up. But that does put more weight on your actual seat, so you might find yourself a little more uncomfortable, like your butt might hurt a little more, just because more weight's on it. But this body position is really popular, and that's because it is so comfortable to ride in. Also, having a handlebar here across allows you to have a lot more easy leverage to grab. I think, for me, the reason for that is because when you're on a more sporty bike, like the 450ss, you have a tendency to put some weight on your handlebars, and you shouldn't do that if you're riding correctly. But having a more upright body position allows you to keep your handlebars a lot lighter, and I find that to make it for a lot more flicky of a ride, especially if you're going in slower speeds like city riding and stuff like that, or, you know, little back roads here. This position allows me to flick the bike in a lot easier than it would if I was on the sportier 450ss. Little roads like this are absolutely phenomenal for naked bikes. I love this body position just in general, so that's why I think I kind of gravitate towards the naked bikes a lot. I really like this body position. It gets me comfortable. I can easily maneuver the bike left and right, and especially on a bike as light as the 450ss, dude, you can throw this thing back and forth and it is not tiring at all. The only issue with this bike is going to come in the way of if you're doing the highway. You guys can see ahead of me, you saw clips earlier, there is no windscreen and nothing in front of us to block that wind. When you combine that with this upright body position, the wind, if you're on the highway for a long period of time, is going to constantly push on your chest, and it will tire you out a lot faster, at least in my experience. So those are just things to keep in mind. If you're looking at doing traveling and long highway days, I am going to try to push you away from the 450NK because you gonna be tired. I also find it a lot easier to balance bikes when I'm upright on them. I don't know if that's a personal thing or what. Now, another thing you got to keep in mind with these naked bikes is that if you are somebody that's going to want to ride aggressively, you know, you go to the mountains or you want to do a track day, the body position that the naked bikes put you in is not necessarily a good body position to ride aggressively. When you're riding aggressively, you're typically up here, up on the handlebars, you're leaning off left and right. That's one of the pros of having a more sportier motorcycle. And when you try to ride a naked bike like that, for one, it's harder to even get in that position. Can I go? That's enough space. I got plenty. But yeah, when you try to ride these bikes aggressively, you know, if I scoot it back and I lean up here, obviously you can do that on this bike, but it just feels so much more purposeful when you're on a bike that's built for doing that. And you can really tell naked bikes are just not meant to do that. Another pro for naked bikes is all of this real estate on the bar. You guys can see my Action 4 is attached to it right now. What it allows me to do is mount all kinds of stuff on the bike. For me, a lot of times it's cameras or phone mounts. It's just a lot easier to mount that stuff on naked bikes. So I do tend to appreciate naked bikes for that a lot of the time while we're stopping. Now, one of the other things I wanted to mention with the 450NK is technically, yes, these engines are the exact same. The 450ss and the NK have the same engine. I don't know if this is because of the body position that you are in with the 450NK, but in my experience, the 450NK has a punchier power delivery than the SS. It could totally be just like in my head, and because I'm more upright on this bike, my weight's farther back, and when I give it gas, it's easier to wheelie. But I have found myself wheeling this bike a lot. Versus the 450ss, I don't think I've ever wheelied that bike at all. So the engine could be exactly the same, but something in here is different that makes the bikes ride a lot different. They're both fantastic, and I think they both ride great. But there is that. Also, we don't have Brimbos on here, and in my experience, that doesn't matter. I love this bike. It feels very much like a tiny MT-07. This bike is a better, smaller version of an MT-07 than the MT-03, and for that, Yamaha should be a little worried. This bike is a lot more fun than I think you're gonna expect out of it, and just like the MT-07, it has that very fun, playful vibe in a smaller, lighter package. It's absolutely fantastic. And if you're doing city riding, I think you guys are going to love it. But there's a lot of people that are going to ride differently. And for those guys, I think the 450ss is going to be your move. So let's jump on that, and let's talk through the ideal rider on the 450ss. Alright guys, before we get on the 450ss, one of the things that I did want to mention, I know looks are subjective, but if we're going to compare both of these motorcycles, I think CFMOTO absolutely knocked it out of the park with the design on the 450ss. The 450NK does not look bad, I'm not trying to say that, but comparative, we've got full LED lighting, we've got a pass-through tail, we have these winglets that actually offer downforce. It is a fantastic looking bike, and if I've heard anything that you guys have said online, it's that you guys agree with me that this is a good looking bike. But that, just because a bike is good looking does not mean you should buy that bike. So let's take it for a spin and discuss it versus its little brother. Little brother? Its twin? Its sister? I don't know. Let's go ride the 450ss. One of the most popular low-cc bikes on the market right now. So guys, we already touched on looks. I do think this bike absolutely looks phenomenal. One of the other things I want you guys to consider when you're thinking about both bikes is popularity to a degree. Now, the 450ss is one of the most popular entry-level bikes on the market right now. And if you haven't been able to tell that from Instagram videos and YouTube videos and how many people are searching this bike, you can check out the aftermarket space, because I want you to think about it. Why would a company invest their time and energy to sell a product that for a motorcycle that a lot of people aren't going to buy unless they can charge a ton for it? This bike is really popular in the beginner bike segment, which is probably why a lot of you guys are watching this video. But you are seeing, I literally feel like every day I get a message from one of you guys saying, hey, have you seen the company that's making blank for this bike? Literally the other day, somebody was like, hey, you know they're making a quick shifter for that now, right? Every single minute, I feel like there's aftermarket companies making more parts for this bike, and that's because of how popular it is. So when you're considering both bikes, if doing modifications to that bike is a big deal for you and you look forward to doing that, you might want to be looking at the 450ss a little more than the NK. Now, that being said, the 450ss and the NK, they share a lot of components, so a lot of those things that are being made for each bike will transfer to the other bike. Obviously, do your research before you end up, pulling any triggers and all. But I've noticed a lot more companies making products for this bike as compared to the 450NK. Now, the next thing that is going to be the biggest deal that we've been talking about this whole video is body position on the 450ss. You guys probably saw when I got on the bike and started it up, you guys saw how much leaning forward I had to do. There's pros and cons to that. It's not just that's the more uncomfortable body position. When you are leaned up on the bike, you are able to far easier to get off the bike and lean it over and really ride this bike aggressively. And I feel like that is the key with who needs the 450ss over the NK. If you're a beginner rider, you might not know what type of riding you want to do, which kind of makes it hard to make a good bike decision. But when it comes to the 450ss, it is going to be far more comfortable to ride this bike aggressively than it is with the 450NK. Can I go? Ah, dang it, I was a minute too late. So this is the weird thing about the body position, right? For everyday riding and riding in traffic, the NK is going to be more comfortable because you're upright, right? You're like this. You're not bent over hurting your back. My back is screwed from all the riding that I've done in the past. But when it comes to more technical riding, this bike, the SS, is going to be far superior. It just preps you up and puts you in a body position to where it's really easy to lean off the bike. So if you feel like that's going to be the type of riding you want to be doing, you're definitely going to want to be looking at the 450ss. Now, I have a continued point with that. that also does lead me to where I do feel like the 450ss's major weakness is, and that is in the suspension. Now, in my experience, I haven't done any track days yet, but I do have some on the books that I've done on the 450ss. But the technical riding that I've done on city streets, the suspension is soft, and for street riding, like, look how crappy this road is. There's stuff all over the place, especially if you go like downtown with this thing. It's terrible. But a softer suspension is going to make it a little more soft and a little more comfortable. But when it comes to technical riding, it's better to have a hard suspension. You're able to get a lot more feel out of the tires and stuff like that. And with this suspension, as you can see, it's not adjustable. Like, no shit, right? Like, if this suspension was adjustable, that would be hilarious, actually. But there is no adjustable suspension on this bike, which means you can't change it from its soft ability. Well, there is a way, and you guys will have to subscribe because we are going to be doing a video on that. But for most people, you're stuck with a little bit softer of a suspension. So if you do buy this motorcycle, if you know, let's just say you decide, you know what, Chase, woo! Let's just say you decide a little more technical riding is something you really want to, you know, potentially do in the future. This bike is your way to go, but I would imagine after a few years of it, you might get to the point where you need a more firm suspension. Now, it's outside of the scope of this video, but there are ways to fix that. We will be doing that in a future episode of WBR Garage. But I know y'all, because y'all are probably just like me. You're going to look at the 450ss, you're going to realize, and you're going to personally think, this is what I think, that the 450ss looks absolutely sick, and you want a bike that looks absolutely sick. And you're going to forego a more comfortable, better bike for the job of the 450NK because of the looks. And luckily, this bike is really good at touring. It has no problem doing that, and it's not really that uncomfortable to ride around town, especially with how lightweight it is. But if you want to be sporty, this is your one. Now, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started doing videos on these CFMOTO bikes, I was just like you, and I was really worried about the build quality of these things, seeing as though they're the whole Chinese bike thing. It doesn't help that I've had experience with other Chinese bikes in the past where, let's just say, the quality wasn't really up to par. But I can happily tell you guys, I have spent thousands of miles not only on these bikes, but my own personal CFMOTOs, and I have had no build quality issues whatsoever. And because of all that experience, I really have no problem at all recommending either of these motorcycles for you, and I think they'd be phenomenal pickups for you. If you're into sportier riding and you know, see yourself doing that kind of stuff, 450ss is the way to go. If you guys are going to be doing city riding, you want to be comfortable and you just want to be kind of casual and you're not doing a ton of highway, 450NK is going to be a phenomenal little MT-07 for you. And guys, I'm Chaseontwowheels. I really hope this video helped you guys out deciding on which one of these bikes to pick up. Let me know which one you pick up in the comments down below. And if you got to this point in the video, you are in the outro crew, which means you got to the end. Thank you guys so much. It really does help the YouTube channel out when you guys watch to the end of the videos. In the comments down below, after you like the video, let me know which one of these bikes you would pick and why. I'm Chaseontwowheels, and I'll see you guys on the next one. You guys go out there and ride safe. Later. This is just a test shot, Chris. No big deal. I'm just trying to figure out framing.